Fun little fact, the word metabolism comes from the Greek metabole, meaning to make change. While we often associate the word metabolism specifically with food, it actually refers to all the physiological processes that keep us functioning, from muscle recovery to energy production and even brain health. Today I'm joined by Just, a nutritional therapist who's passionate about practical science-backed nutrition, the kind that doesn't involve fads or restrictions. Welcome to the podcast.
Thank you.
So glad to have you here. We'll get right in. I know so many of our listeners are always looking for real talk when it comes to nutrition. They're smart and they want practical advice. So we're going to dive straight in on talking about nutrition and skin with anti-aging. Many Pilates practitioners are interested in glowing skin, and there's a lot of talk about skin healthy foods. What are the top foods that you'd recommend to support healthy glowing skin, especially as we get older?
So when it comes to skin, top thing is to keep obviously your inflammation down and have good fats in your diet. So your omega-3 is going to be important here, but also avoid all these fat-free products because generally speaking they will be more processed and they're not good for you. But we do want to have a good amount of fat in our diet, especially those good fats, because they're quite important to keep the cell structure nice and plump and firm. And if your cells looking nice in a nice structure, they will create nice barriers, isn't it, as they lying down on top of each other. Whereas if your cells will be a bit funny, wrinkly structures, that's the surface that they're gonna create, and that's gonna just reflect on your skin as well. So if you wanna have beautiful skin, good amount of good fats in your diet is very important. Also, you want to go for proteins, you want to go for antioxidants, and you want to go for vitamins that helps to build collagen in your body. So collagen is not just something that we drink in a powdered form or in capsules. Collagen is just naturally occurring material in your body that your body actually builds. It just needs to have those building blocks to keep doing what it does. So vitamin A is important here, vitamin C will be important here, protein will be important here. So all these good things that you can get from whole food. So to say that is just one thing for glowing skin is combination of the things, really, that is the key. But if you're following nice balanced diet, you should be sorted and fine. But I feel like there's a lot of misconception about what a healthy diet is, and I still meet people that tend to choose fat-free products instead of whole kind of products. Let's say yogurts, dairy things. So yeah, I think we just need to change really fashion about that.
So what would be some good examples of good fats, according to you?
Yeah. So good fats will be your oily fish because they have omega-3s, and that is very important for its anti-inflammatory effects and also providing this nice fats. Avocados are always our favorite and very fashionable right now, but just like good quality oils, your nuts and seeds. Good quality avocado oil in your diet would be important. And also if you going for things like yogurt and maybe whole milk in your diet, so yeah, whole milk has to be in your coffee if that's what you're choosing, or in your tea instead of skim milk. Also, I would much rather people have full fat yogurt, nice Greek yogurt, instead of going for zero fat. So yeah, these things are important little changes.
Yeah. So I want to rewind to the collagen, that it's not just a powder.
Yeah.
That's very new information for me. I mean, I know that the muscles are built with collagen and the body produces it, but in terms of where to source it in our diets, aside from powders, what would be foods that we can put in our diets that are very high in collagen or accelerate collagen production? Is it that the foods have collagen in them, or that they assist with the production of collagen in our body?
Both. So you can have, basically collagen is connective, one of the parts of connective tissue. So if you're eating, let's say, fish with skin, chicken with skin, all these kind of like, we don't need to go just for chicken breast. In nutrition world, we said you need to use then everything nose to tail. So basically, for a good collagen supply through the diet, you would want to have, let's say, small fish in the can with the bones, so like your sardines or mackerels, what they have, and you just eat like kind of whole thing, right? So those could be good. Chicken, not peeling the skin, because the fashion was that it was too fatty. But that's not really true. If you want a collagen, that is what you want to have. All these bone broth are great because they made from boiling bones for a really long time, and this gelatin-like substance, that one is great. Also, if you're choosing to have, let's say, vegan sweets, they're usually gonna be made with starches to keep this gelatine kind of consistency. Whereas if it's not vegan sweets, they will be made ideally with gelatin, and gelatin is your collagen supply.
Oh,
through the
so
diet.
to stay young, people should be eating more Haribo.
No, that's not what I'm saying.
I'm messing. No, but I personally don't eat meat, nor do a lot of people I know in the community. So are there options for people on a plant-based diet, a vegan diet, or even vegetarian diet in getting their omegas and the collagen in their diet?
When it comes to collagen, I won't be able to advise on that because I don't work with vegans or vegetarians. So that's not my area of expertise, and I haven't done research in that area. When it comes to omega-3s, yes, there is plant-based omega-3s available. However, they won't be as powerful or as potent as the animal source ones.
Okay, perfect. And then in terms of anti-aging and skincare, what is it actually that people are looking for? So aside from the diet, when I see someone who I think looks young for their age versus old for their age, what is it that I'm looking at? Is it wrinkles? Is it hydration? I'm actually trying to think right now what it is that I'm looking for in the skin for it to look young.
I think it's energy of the person, isn't it?
Energy, sort of in the eyes. So in the
but they say like, oh, you can have old soul, really. So from nutrition point of view, I would say, probably wrinkles, this young appearance, probably like firmness of the skin. That's what you want,
And that's
elasticity.
And that's where we're looking for the high omega foods, is to help with the plumpness because of the strong structure versus the wrinkly structure.
Yeah, because if you have collagen supports elasticity of the skin, right? So if you have good elasticity of the skin, even let's say if you put on weight, you lose weight, instead of skin getting soggy, just adjust to the new shape and it's elastic enough to go back instead of getting a bit like stretched and soggy. So you can see these things a little bit appearing. However, nowadays it's probably hard to navigate because of the amount of cosmetics that we use, isn't it, on the skin? So
So does using cosmetics on the skin have a positive or a negative effect overall, would you say?
It depends on your choices, but I would say from my point of view, although I use cosmetics myself, if I have to be talking to the audience, have event or something, obviously you have to look presentable. But here I would use a phrase, know your poison, choose it wisely.
Yeah.
So what it is, obviously the stuff we use on our skin gets absorbed through the skin, goes into the body, goes into our bloodstream. It has to go through the liver and then be processed, ideally eliminated. But a lot of these chemicals a lot of these chemicals also are called like forever chemicals. That means body cannot extract them and they might just stay in your body forever, doing it harm. Similar like heavy metals kind of does. So you wanna, that's why choose your poison wisely. So if there is something like, I don't look good without mascara on. I have very blunt eyelashes. So, I'll go for that. But do I have to, cover myself head to toes in Victoria's Secret body lotion? No, I don't have to, right? So you can just do these like smart choices and shifts if you don't need to have that much perfumes really around you and on your body in skincare. You can maybe avoid those and choose things you cannot avoid, like foundation, mascara, or eyeshadows, whatever is your poison, right?
I
Whatever
feel
you
like
choose.
that's a lot of poisons.
Yeah, but this is the thing why I'm saying like we need to choose wisely, because we obviously live in a world where we want to look pretty, and that's nothing, there's nothing wrong with that. That's absolutely fine. However, do we need all of this stuff that is throwing at us? Maybe not. So if you have your favorite perfume that you spray on yourself every day, right? Maybe then you don't need to have body lotion that is perfumed, or your shower gel that is perfumed.
Yeah, it
That
makes
that kind of like balances out a little bit. I'm not saying your perfume won't be like toxic to you. It will be, but at least then don't spray on your skin. Just spray on your clothes. Like these like smart little shifts and changes what we can do to support our body to go through things. So that's why there's so much misconception on social media when you see they just pick one little thing and they just go like, this is poison, this is bad, avoid. Ooh. It's like, yes, but like we can do these little changes to make it like a little bit less bad or adjustable, because we don't live in an ideal world. So come on.
Yeah, I imagine that a lot of people, if they went back to the basics, so diet, sleep, exercise,
Yeah.
there would be less of a need anyway for covering up dark circles, covering up like
Yes.
blemishes, covering
Yeah.
up X, Y, Z. Yet somehow the culture does seem to be the band-aid culture of sort out your dark circles overnight with this cream, sort out your blemishes in 2 weeks with this tablet, and so on and so forth, when actually if people slow down a bit, had a little bit of patience, focused on diet, exercise and sleep, perhaps a lot of these problems would go away. But I feel maybe, especially here in London, people don't have the patience. It's the quick culture, overnight results. Do you see a lot of that with your work?
Yeah, and especially with these healthy snacks. So I get asked so often, it's like, oh, what would you recommend? What's the healthy snack? What is the next healthy snack that I can include? And I get like with some people, they need to be reminded that, yeah, you can choose that instead of that instead of that, and that would be smart choice. And they're like, oh yeah, cool, love it, thank you. But with some people you talk and you can tell that they probably know more healthy snacks than you do. And yet they still want another one. What's the magic pill? Because that one is not working. And that's because people are just like, I'm an emotional eater. What's the healthy snack I can choose? And I'm like, well, it's not about another healthy snack you can choose. It's about maybe addressing your emotions and not having that snack to numb your emotions. So it's like we're just looking at it a little bit from the wrong angle.
Yeah.
So yes, there is this fast pace, fast going, fast thing, put the band-aid. It's like, forget that you're human, forget you have emotions, forget you have stress, just like deal with it, go, go, go. But as you said, even it's about slowing down, get in touch with your body, accept how you feel and what you feel instead of numbing it. And then have 3 balanced meals a day. You should be fine.
When it comes to anti-aging, it's quite unique in that you don't really know if it's working. I.e., if you want to lose weight, you approach your diet and exercise in a certain way, you lose the weight, and if you stop, it comes back. Whereas with anti-aging prevention, it's really hard to know if it's working. Are there any markers people can look for that if they are approaching their diet and exercise and nutrition sort of holistically, that they know that it's working anti-aging wise?
So your best marker always gonna be the way you feel, and I just can't think of anything better than that, because even if your blood test gonna show you amazing results but you don't feel amazing, like, would you believe that? Are you okay? Probably not really. And that's what GP does now, right? They check your blood and they say, no, but you should be fine. I don't know why you feel like crap. That doesn't make sense. It doesn't match your blood test results. Blood test says you're fine. Which is not quite true, isn't it? So I would say, your best marker will be how you feel. If you feel better, if you feel happier, if you're happy what you see in the mirror, then you can tell that is working. When it comes to some supplements, you can probably not that quickly say on your skin, because skin is the last organ that will receive nutrients. All other this is what we forget. If we get depletion in nutrients in the body, whole body is depleted, your internal organs as well, and they are priority for keeping you alive. Therefore, if you're starting to take nutrients, first thing that what you're gonna nurture and trying to fix will be your internal organs, because they are priority. And it's just later on what is left, or if you're taking it regularly, that will come into the skin, into your nails and hair. That's why they do say results to see things improving will take you taking some supplements regularly for like 3-4 months or even longer, depending on your status. So yeah, the best marker I would say always is how you feel. And then if you, with the time passing by, started to be happy with what you see in the mirror and about yourself, that will be your best indication that is working for you.
That's very interesting. So by that logic, the skin will be the first to start showing signs of malnutrition, but the last to recover from it. If it's the internal organs that take priority first, then it will come.
I love that logic, but not necessary as well. Because it's just lots of other factors that comes into play. So it's hard to say, and genetics has to play in these things. So it's not as simple as that,
Okay,
unfortunately.
While we're on the topic of skin, I personally had a skin MOT a couple of years ago, and that was with a dermatologist, and everything was fine. She was sort of happy with it, aside from that my skin is very dehydrated, and she wanted me to drink less coffee.
Okay.
Is there something to that, in that does coffee dehydrate your skin as much as we hear? Because coffee dehydrating the skin isn't a new thing I've heard. I don't feel like I overdo it. I drink maybe 2 to 3 strong coffees a day. And now in the Pilates sphere, specifically, matcha is the new craze to give you more of a slow release of energy, or this is the rhetoric that's being circulated. In terms of both energy and focus, and in terms of skin and hydration, is matcha actually a better alternative? Or, as I'm guessing, it's a little bit more complicated than what I'm making it, but could you just break that down for everyone?
Yeah, so when it comes to drinking coffee, yes, it does have something called diuretic effect, which is enhancing removal of fluids from your body. And if you don't compensate your cup of coffee with the additional glass of water, it can be that you can get dehydrated. Obviously, it all depends how much water do you drink through the day. If you having classes, I assume your consumption of water is a bit higher than I would like to think that.
It is not, because I'm terrified of needing a wee during class. So I don't
fair
drink enough because I'm afraid to need the toilet.
Well, there you go. And then you're having 3 coffees on the top that flushes out whatever there is for your cells to hold on. So that kind of answers the question, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, we just need to be mindful. It's all about balance, right? I'm not saying coffee is bad for you. It all comes down to your genetics, whether you can tolerate it or not, caffeine. Because regardless, like if it comes from coffee or from the tea, if you're not really good at tolerating caffeine, you will be affected. Then another thing, how is your diet and fluid intake, actually water intake, compensates for, having that cup of coffee? Is it that you using your coffee as a fluid, or is it just, for a pleasure and you know that you need to drink water? Well, using as a fluid, coffee is a fluid, right? But in terms of like, are you drinking that to kill your thirst, or are you drinking that, to get your pleasure and the kick, and then you're gonna drink water? So these things comes into play. So to say if matcha is better alternative for coffee, yes, in some way, because matcha does have same antioxidants like green tea, and we know green tea was, and still is, known as kind of healthy alternative for its antioxidants and other health benefits that it brings. So it could have that effect even at bigger strength, because matcha is ground leaves of green tea, right? So when the green tea is just infusion, matcha is actually powdered leaves, so it will have higher concentration of those antioxidants, and it also has something called, if I'm not mistaken the name, L-theanine, which has this a bit of calming effect. So that's why it says it has this slower release of energy, because it has caffeine kick, but it also has something that helps to provide this like little bit calming effect as well. Whereas coffee just like gives you a kick and you go.
Yeah.
So everything has time and place, I think, in this world. So is coffee, so is matcha. However, we just need to be mindful how it's affecting our body and how we choosing. So if you're not tolerating caffeine well and now you're choosing matcha on empty stomach, yeah, you're still gonna be a bit... I'm not sure like if it's really that healthy alternative to do things. I would always say choose your caffeine after meal instead of empty stomach. That will be better. And yeah, don't have it before bedtime or in the evening or late afternoon, because you do need to have this time for things to clear out of your body before you go sleep. That's a very important thing. So even if it's matcha considered to be healthy, you still don't want to have that in late afternoon.
Mention that you need to leave time for your body to flush things out. Would you consider overnight being a period long enough to be considered as a fast? As there is this massive culture around fasting in the health and wellness sphere. So what would you consider a healthy fast, if there is such a thing, versus an unhealthy fast, if there is such a thing? And if you could just kind of paint a picture around any benefits or negatives, or where these myths kind of come from.
Yeah. So fasting, generally speaking, is a good thing. We do need to give break for our digestive system to get its job done and do whatever it has to do. However, with the fashion that comes into place nowadays, especially from social media, and this trend of skipping breakfast and starting to eat from lunch, it works well for men. It doesn't work as well for women. Even though you say you are not morning person or you're not breakfast person and you're not hungry in the morning. I get that. I was myself like that. But it will have negative impact on your body and on your hormones eventually. Especially if you're running that fasting period morning on caffeine, and especially if you have very stressful morning, whatever that is, physically or emotionally, you do need to then provide energy to your body. Another thing is how you're breaking that fast. So if you have very slow, relaxing morning and, you're sipping on your warm water with lemon and, just slowly starting your morning, having another herbal tea and that is why you're fasting and delaying breakfast, that is fine. If you're meditating, doing your yogas and doing your flushings and hydration, it's not that big of a deal, but you're having a relaxing morning, right? And your healthy breakfast is probably at hand anytime you start to feel hungry. And once you're gonna feel hungry, you're gonna eat that. That's absolutely fine. But what more than often we tend to do is, I'm fasting in the morning, and you start to feel hungry. I'm not gonna eat because I wanna eat at 12, or I'm not gonna eat because my lunch break is at 12 or 1. So even though your body is sending you signals that it's time to feed it and fuel it, you're not going to do it because it's just conditions not in the place to do that. And that is bad, because I feel like fasting should be done something in balance and in sync with our body's needs, not with the needs of our environment and lifestyle that we run, and especially like this busy and stressful environment and lifestyle that we run. So if you're doing fasting as something good for your body, you need to listen body's needs and deliver on that. Whereas if you're just running because you don't have time to eat, that's then not fasting. I much rather you don't stick to your breakfast, lunch, and dinner meals. And then another thing is, for women would be always healthier to have breakfast, lunch, early dinner, and this famous fashion, well, back in days probably fashion, of not eating after 6. For female, that is your ideal fasting window. Having your dinner earlier, having this time before sleep for your body to calm down, do its digestion, and then go sleep. And that will be your fasting window until next morning.
I get a lot of people ask me in Pilates world, so clients and participants in the classes, about fasting. And sometimes clients will tell me I'm fasting, not for religious reasons, that's a completely different thing, but in terms of for their health and weight loss.
Yeah.
And I always ask them to get back to me, especially women, because I've never seen a woman sustain it more than maybe about a month. They just start to feel tired or drained, whereas I have seen a lot of men sustain it for years. So what you say about that it doesn't work for women, it makes complete sense. And then the fasting window of breakfast, lunch and dinner, when I'm left to my own devices, that is exactly what I do intuitively. I wake up, I eat breakfast, I have lunch, and then I have an early dinner. So I'm listening to the hunger cues. But then with lifestyle, with work, sometimes you end up having a very late dinner and you become in this choice of, do I skip dinner entirely or do I have something late and then get woken up?
Yeah.
Which would you say would be the better alternative? Maybe there isn't a right or wrong answer, but how should you balance that choice?
That's a bit of a tough question. I guess it depends on the individual. If you're not hungry for dinner and you're happy to skip it, then skip it. You're gonna have nice breakfast. If you know you will not have time for dinner or healthy dinner, or you know it's gonna be late, you know ahead that it's gonna be busy afternoon and busy day, just have bigger lunch to keep you going for longer, and then maybe have a very light dinner, something small, just to, kill that hunger so you can fall asleep. Because sometimes it can happen that you're so hungry that you cannot fall asleep, and we don't want that. We want to support our sleep as much as possible because it's so important for our hormones and longevity and anti-aging and everything that we talked about.
I am actually quite good at planning ahead, or I consider myself to be someone who's quite good at that.
Yeah.
I think 9 times out of 10 I manage to plan ahead, but occasionally I will have to grab convenience food. Here in London, life is hectic. You're from one place to another. Sometimes you have the time to eat but not to prepare it.
Yeah.
And when there's the meal deal culture here,
Yeah.
which is very good value for money, it is quite easy to start relying on that more and more. And I know a lot of professional women and men who rely heavily on getting their food from a supermarket, doing their meal deal. Now, while I guess there are different options in terms of nutritional balance, the thing I'm curious about is this convenience food culture affecting our relationship with food in terms of mindful eating.
It could do, but it depends on the individual that is choosing that sandwich or that meal deal, right? So if we're choosing whatever is at hand and still sitting at our desk while eating that, still having that on the go, still having conversation on the phone and planning 10,000 other things, then yes, this disconnects you completely and there will be no mindfulness about, because you're not going to even probably remember what sandwich you had, right? Whereas I'm not completely against those things. I've worked in financial institutions myself. I know how fast that environment is and how demanding that is. And you just need to do your best. So sometimes having that meal deal is the best option that you have that day. And that's okay. It's just what you're choosing with it. If you kind of focusing on supporting your body the best you can. So even when choosing meal deal, instead of crisps, you can still go for maybe carrot sticks with hummus as a snack, right? Instead of zero Coke, you could go for maybe a bottle of water, right? And if you're choosing sandwich, maybe there's one with a little bit vegetables or something green or tomatoes in it. So it's like those little things that you believe that will be good for you, and you're making these mindful choice because you know it will be better than just grabbing anything without looking. It's already a bit of mindfulness, isn't it? Because you're connecting with your body and you're doing something good for yourself. Also, if you don't have time to prepare meal, because obviously it's longer time that should be dedicated to that, or go and stay in a queue for however long to get like some nice bowl of salad. I much rather you to choose than meal deal, but have these 5-10 minutes for yourself, eating that sandwich quietly and mindfully, like biting, chewing properly through it, feeling the taste and texture. That is still mindfulness, isn't it? And connecting with your body. What is your body doing in that moment? Instead of having that sandwich just like stucking inside while you're doing something else and don't even pay attention to that. And when I'm saying this, there's probably a lot of people like, oh, what does she know about nutrition if she says that it's okay to eat sandwich? Why I'm saying this, we are not just what we eat, but also what we absorb in the body. So if we don't digest our food well, it doesn't matter how healthy your food is, it will not do much good to your body, isn't it? So whereas even if you have something like sandwich from the meal deal, but if your body gonna digest it well, it will be healthier for your body and your digestion to deal with that thing that comes in, and let it through, let it out, forget about it. Because there is just so much to this misconception and food culture, what's healthy, what's not healthy. But we need to remember that it's not just what you're putting in your body, but also how and where it goes. It's like much more complicated process. But I'm just saying, like, having good digestion in place is a little bit more important than focusing on if you ticked all the boxes for your micros and micros and all the nutrients that you aiming for. That's not to say that if you have great digestion, it's better to choose Snickers bar instead of salad bowl. That's not what I'm saying at all. But what I'm saying,
I'd be very excited.
That would be very exciting. Yeah,
New
sorry,
wellness diet.
I can't really advise that. That's not what I'm saying. But what I'm saying is we need to do best we can with what we are given, and just try to do something to support our body and make that easy on the body.
Emotions have a massive effect on food without even being any kind of specialist in nutrition or food. If I just look at myself and the people around me, when you are stressed, one of two things happens. You either stop eating, you lose the appetite, or you eat more. It seems to be more common that people eat more and make worse choices under stress. But I've never met a person who's stressed and eats well and balanced and easily. So I think a lot of people try to remove that from the equation. It's almost they want to just see the data of the macros and the micronutrients and think in this ideal world where they're going to always be able to make those choices well. Because when I've worked more in fitness as opposed to wellness, so I did work in fitness for a while, people are not only ill-advised because you'll get that PT who's just saying, just eat this diet with all these salad leaves and 20 vegetables a day, as if people can, one, do that overnight. Two, I think that people need to somehow want the food. It's not about being a diva about it and not doing anything difficult, but if your life feels worse off as a matter of this change, which for a lot of people, food is something enjoyable that pleases their emotions, then that's why you're going to end up going back to the diet you had before, because actually your emotions felt better. Even if your physical health on paper might be a bit better, your emotional well-being is worse off. And don't want to be too generalistic here, but I think especially women, because the emotions fluctuate more with the hormones, are far more susceptible to not being able to maintain something for 3, 6, 12 months consistently if their emotional well-being is being put at risk. In terms of how you work with people and how you advise people, how do you advise people balance emotions in terms of emotional eating, cravings, etc., with a balanced nutritional profile, i.e. the data, the paper, the micronutrients, and ticking everything off?
Yeah. So that's where education comes into place about, first we want to sort out your stress levels. That is the key. Because if your stress levels are not sorted and not addressed, then you will not have good digestion, because your stomach acid will not be there to do what it has to do. If it's not there, goes into the guts, creates a little bit more inflammation than it needs to, and you're probably going to end up with these leaky guts, with sensitivities to the foods, intolerances, and God knows where it can lead. Your liver going to be affected. You're not going to detoxify things well. You're going to start to have spots on your skin if you're not eliminating things well. And it just goes out of control. So even if you're going to have a bowl of salad, but you're stressed, you're not going to benefit much from that, right? So we want to have a good digestion in place first, and then focus on your micros, macros, all the nutrients that we need to get there.
It's really interesting that people seem to recognize that in all aspects of their life, that these different physiological processes are real without really noticing that they interconnect. Because we know in fitness and in wellness that exercise releases cortisol in the body. We know that stress also releases cortisol in the body. And we know that exercise also releases endorphins and feelings of being happy. But then we don't seem to register. Maybe it's wishful thinking for a lot of people that they want a clear-cut answer. So cortisol levels, they're something we're often told to reduce or be on top of. But if we're exercising and releasing cortisol, how is that something we can keep balanced?
Yeah, that's a good question. So probably I will start from very far and explaining that we hear about cortisol as a bad thing because it causes stress on the body and stress is bad. That's not quite right. We naturally have high levels of cortisol in the morning because that is what wakes us up. And that is absolutely fine to have it high in the morning. So we wake up, and then throughout the day, ideally kind of slowly, gradually goes down. And in the evening it's at its lowest point. That's where melatonin kicks in and puts us to sleep. Because when melatonin is high, cortisol has to be low. If cortisol is high, melatonin has to be low, right? So this is the ratio we ideally want to have throughout the day. Just like dancing, right? Now, cortisol is in the body for a reason, and it's okay to have it. It's bad when it goes high and stays high throughout the day, because that's when we get a bit of damage done. Because when cortisol is high, we don't burn fat. Our blood sugar levels get affected by that as well, and body is prioritizing being stressed instead of this rest and digest state. That means we're not digesting well as well. So how to get your cortisol levels down throughout the day when they don't need to go down, or let's say maybe in the afternoon when we want them to go down. So it could be a good idea to do maybe breathing exercises, not stimulating your body with additional stressors like caffeine, going back to that. So in the afternoon, probably don't have your matcha or coffee, doesn't matter how fashionable it might be. And then sweating it out, that is quite a good way getting rid of cortisol as well from the body. Drink lots of water to help it flush it out. Pilates is quite a gentle exercise. It's not cardio that kind of like pumps you with cortisol. It requires more like stretching and strength. So I wouldn't say it probably, well, depends on the strength of the classes. Probably you can tell me that there is class that you can probably raise cortisol levels up with that.
For sure.
For sure, yeah.
For sure.
So,
but it's not inherently what Pilates is built on.
Yeah.
It's sort of developed.
Yeah. So what we want actually, especially in the evening or those like afternoon classes, probably if we tend to exercise later a day, not in the morning, you probably would be better off with something like Pilates class than going on a treadmill or for a jog. Well, maybe jog, but you know, these like very active, very kind of pumping exercises, because they would raise your cortisol levels more up and might eventually affect your sleep and also digestion of your dinner. So yeah, something like Pilates class would be more beneficial choice in that case.
It's so interesting because without knowing it, I consider myself quite intuitive.
Yeah.
Intuitively, that is exactly what I do. I do my HIIT classes in the morning,
Yeah.
and then once or twice a week I do Pilates in the evening.
Yeah.
And I can't seem to get myself to do it the other way around. By the evening, I'm too tired to face a high energy class. But in the morning, I feel like I crave that.
Yeah.
So it just feels correct
Yeah.
somehow. And it's so interesting to know that there's actually science and physiology behind it as well. Another thing that sort of ties back to the emotional releases is that I know it's a bit of a cliche or it's a bit of a sweeping statement, but women are known, or should I say have the reputation for being more emotional. And for me, the main difference in the physiology of a woman and a man is the hormones and the menstrual cycle. So what effect do hormones actually have on your emotions as part one of the question? And part two is how does nutrition then affect that?
Oh dear.
It's a very big question.
Yeah, and very broad question. Our hormones do have impact because they fluctuate all the time, and because we have this cycle of 28 days, which is 4 weeks. So we have this hormone called progesterone that has calming effect on the body, and it goes to peak time on your week of the cycle 3, and then on the week 4, right before your period, starts to drop down. Now this hormone gets into same receptors that GABA neurotransmitters does. I'm going very technical here, but I do have a point, I promise. GABA is also something very calming that we want to have in evening that will help us to calm down after a long day and go to sleep. Now, for women, let's say if in men's body you would have a little bit of progesterone somewhere floating, your body doesn't depend on that. But for women, if through our week 3-4 progesterone goes up, body kind of relies on the calming effect on it. And then when it goes down and levels drops, if your receptors doesn't switch, are not as elastic and doesn't switch as quick for the calming effect to another neurotransmitter, that's where you have this irritability. That's where you have this a bit of like mean girl face coming in.
The hanginess.
So yes, so we do need to work with our cycle and with balancing hormones in terms of like supporting them and understanding what's going on in the body, so then we can do our best to support that. And it's actually very rewarding and very beautiful once you understand what is going with you, and then just not think that you're crazy or, you know, other people think that you're crazy. It's not that, I promise you. There's always logic explanation to what's going on. So I think it's just very empowering, because then you can actually do something about it. So you know, oh, this my hormone might be down, so I'll support another one for calming effect, because you can choose like calming teas in that moment, maybe like at that time a little bit more of them. You know that, oh, this is the time when I need to dedicate a little bit more time for maybe breathing exercises or gentle classes, maybe not have fasting during that time, because for us, that's why I'm saying, like, for men, you can just probably have it one way and keep going and you're okay with that routine. For women, throughout the cycle, it won't be the same. Like, 1 week not going to be the same to another week. You need to adjust to those hormonal fluctuations, because what you eat and how you eat might affect those balances.
What sort of changes would we be looking at, food choices wise, timing wise, quantity wise? Does all of that play a part, or is it more so the other aspects as well, in terms of, because I know you work very holistically, so things like sleep and exercise, did that have to change as well? And how different would it look week by week? I know it's quite a big question again.
To that, I can say it doesn't have to be that different week to week, but you need to be mindful that some of the days might not be a good idea to fast, or ensure that a good supply of carbs and nutrients will be needed. This is another thing when we demonize carbs, but for us as women it's so important, isn't it, for our body, because it does support hormonal production. That's why a lot of women starting ketogenic diets falls, because low carbs is not always a good idea for us to go, especially like depending on the week. So when you have this week 3 building progesterone, you wanna have carbs in place. And I'm not saying like just live on almond croissants. That's not the case. That's not gonna make you healthy. But having like these nice complex carbs in place, nutritious carbs. So you have whole wheat things, you have your sweet potatoes, you have good, nice starchy vegetables in place. They're absolutely fine and good for our diet. We don't need to cut them out completely. In terms of exercises, just feel what is right for you. This is very important. I can give you the best plan in the world, but if you're not going to follow it, if you're not excited about it, if this is not your thing based on your routine, on your personal likes, dislikes, you're not going to do it, right? Whereas if you're excited about at least 1 or 2 little changes that you can incorporate, that will be so much more beneficial for you and for your body than doing absolutely nothing on the best plan. Then doing something just a little bit, maybe it's not that ideal, but at least you're doing something. I love what you said about going intuitive on some things and listening to your body, even if you think that you need to do high intensity training because you heard somewhere that is a good thing, but the only time you can do it in the evening and you can just not bring yourself whatsoever to do it, it's okay not to do it. Then it's just do maybe stretching in the morning or stretching in the evening, and that will be fine for your body. So it's hard to say because it varies from individual to individual, but generally speaking, we need to be more intuitive with our bodies and see what feels right to do those things. But generally speaking, there are times in the cycle where cutting your carbs or fasting would be not a good idea. That's what I can say to that.
That's sort of the most general one, but other than that, very sort of individual.
Yeah, because it depends on your stress levels, depends on your nutritional needs, depends on your lifestyle, your personal likes, dislikes. I can say that, I know eating broccolis are good for you, but I did know a person that actually was feeling like they were getting high after eating broccoli. They were just not tolerating
I don't know, I really like broccoli personally, so maybe I could be the best one.
It kind of like depends on an individual and what you're tolerating. So that would be what is the healthiest choice for you.
I actually love your approach that it's very holistic and it's not about just the numbers on the page, but taking into the big picture. Some people I've met, or a lot of people I've met actually, are fussy eaters.
Yeah.
And at some point you have to draw a line and say you have to start liking new foods. You have to find a way to like new foods. I remember when I first went vegan, because I've been vegan now about 12, 13 years perhaps, and I ate nothing. I was classic beige eater. So even as a herbivore, if you want to, not herbivore, omnivore, sorry, when I was eating meat and eggs and dairy in principle, I actually wasn't eating that much. I've never particularly liked meat. I used to like salmon, and then I had a couple of things with eggs and dairy that I liked. But other than that, it was pasta, it was potatoes, beige as hell. And then as soon as I started to go vegan, I was left with literally just potatoes and pasta and had to force myself to learn to like other foods. And now I love them. And I had the right motivation for that because my reason for going vegan was very animal based. And every time I saw animal product, it made me quite upset. And that worked, as when I was forcing myself to try a courgette, that was the first vegetable I started to like. I was just in my mind, you can do this, this is for the animals. And then over time you kind of overcome it and I started to love it. And now I love vegetables and I love cooking. But when people's motivation isn't that strong, or isn't as defined, because a lot of people I've noticed in health and fitness and wellness, they want to lose weight because they know they should, or they want to start exercising and get fit because they know they should for their health, for their stress levels. But in terms of the intrinsic personal level of motivation, they haven't found that thought to come to. Is there something people can do in a almost fake it till you make it kind of way until they really discover that one driver? Or is it that we just have to wait until that moment comes, until you have the first heart attack, or until you can't properly walk anymore? Do we have to wait for it to get that bad to find that motivation?
Some people has to, yeah.
Wow.
It comes down to the individual again. As I said, you can see the best nutritionist in the world. You can have the best diet. You can pay the most money and time dedicate to go for consultations and all the blood works and genetic testing you can possibly get. But if there is no internal click for you to do that, if you don't know your whys, if you don't know your reasons, strong reasons, your goals, your motivation is not there for making that change, nothing ever will happen. Like, it just will not happen. So I had a bit of opposite story to yours. I have been vegetarian for 9 years, and then I went back to having a whole diet. And while doing that, so I wasn't educated at that time about vegetarianism as well. I was doing whatever. I did ate lots of vegetables all the time and had no issue with that. However, my protein intake was very low and didn't saw much of an issue with that. I started to feel like crap a bit, developed very bad skin condition. What else came? Joint pains, then depression, had it all. And it's just later when I started to study nutrition and find out about what really these nature's multivitamins are and how important protein sources are and just things like that. Made me change my mind, but also one incident with these animal rights protectors in a city center in Oxford Street, where they usually have their events, was very unpleasant. And I just couldn't believe they were so mean to me, because I was like, I'm vegetarian for 9 years and I was like supporting all of this animal rights, and you like being so mean to me. And I was like, nah, it's just not right. It didn't feel right. So yeah, I kind of then changed to the other direction. And recently, when I had my genetic testing done, what I saw on the paper was that absorbing carotens from the plants, because carotens then gets converted in your body into vitamin A, because we don't get active vitamin A from plant-based food. In my body, genetically, is a bit impaired process, and for me to get vitamin A, I better off with, well, either go for supplements or for animal food sources, because that's where you get active form of vitamin A. And just when looking back, it just made so much sense, because obviously my skin condition came from gut condition being out of control, and gut condition came from having lack of vitamin A in your diet, because I was eating a lot of plants, but if my body was not doing much with it, it didn't go too far.
I take a couple of supplements. I feel better from it. The one that really surprised me how much difference it made to my well-being was I actually take a creatine supplement. So I take a very small amount, and just for brain fog, it completely has been a game changer for me. I used to suffer from severe brain fog, and I always used to take creatine when I was working out a lot. It made sense. I took it for the physical benefit of the recovery and strength. Like, it feels good, you can lift heavier. I was doing a lot of that kind of training in the past, and then over the last 2-3 years I went away from that as I was doing more running, more Pilates, and then I got injured, so I completely stopped taking it, because I wasn't really doing much aside from light cardio, i.e. walking and just being on my feet. And I thought it was purely down to my own mindset that I was getting so much brain fog, that it was a rough year. It was a good rough year. It was just a busy year with an injury. But actually, from day one of reintroducing creatine, the brain fog went away.
Wow.
It is so interesting. I was going to ask you if you have any opinions on that. I know that the only place you find creatine in food is from animal sources that are high in blood, so to speak, so things like blood pudding, liver, etc., which, if I'm honest, even if I did eat meat, I would not be eating those foods. I'm sorry, I'm not a massively fussy eater, but those kind of things I just wouldn't go near. And what is your opinion on general use of creatine in diets? I'll leave it quite open. I'm curious to hear either or both about the physical benefits and the mental and emotional benefits. I appreciate it might not be your specialty. I'm curious if you do have an opinion, either way, physical, mental, emotional, and if it's a good supplement for people to be taking.
So I probably cannot comment specifically on creatine, but I'm glad it worked for you. That is a good sign. Generally speaking, if you on a whole kind of diet without big restrictions, you should be covered and fine. Because you are on a restricted diet, amino acids would be something to consider, because there's a lot of them that we get from animal food sources, and therefore, yes, if you're skipping that part, you might be lacking, which is quite important for our good detoxification and functioning of the body and our hormones as well. Depends. I'm not really advertising, because as a nutritional therapist, I would prefer more, obviously, food sources, and then supplements should supposed to complement your diet, not become a source of some nutrients, like main source of some nutrients. But then again, if we don't live in an ideal world, and it's good that we have now a choice to do something and adjust a little bit and make us feel still good. I think it's worse when we, forced to choose just what's available, and availability is quite hard. So I think we live in the good times when we can actually make these things work for us.
If we take it as well from the more holistic perspective in terms of lowering stress, being happier, etc., if I think back to when I ate meat and dairy and eggs, I wasn't really eating very balanced. It was through a vegan lifestyle that I really learned to cook. That was one big one, and I have a massive passion for cooking. You have to be very creative. Less so nowadays. There are a lot of vegan products on the market. That being said, a lot of them aren't necessarily health foods. There are some, but a lot of them aren't. So it really unlocked a love for cooking, and also something that I find stresses me a lot is not being aligned with my own values. So while, for the sake of this podcast and being concise or efficient with my vocabulary, I call myself vegan, it's nothing I really bring up in conversation with people, because, as you said with this protest, I really don't like the connotation around the word. I have, for example, a pet dog that I bought from a breeder, and I did my research and I considered it ethical by my own standards. But some members, not all, some members of the community were very judgmental of that, and I had a particular experience that I can name. I can't name the brand or the company, who were very, very unfair with me about that. By my own standards, I thought it was not a very holistic approach, because veganism is kind of defined as doing your best to eradicate animal product that you don't need to survive. And in terms of getting my dog, I considered it the more ethical approach, because one, I needed it. I needed the companionship. I was going through a very difficult time, and it was something decided with a therapist. And it was more ethical for me to get a puppy than a rescue dog that wouldn't fit my lifestyle, that I have no experience in training dogs. So in terms of fostering a rescue, I would have not given that dog a better life. And it's kind of the same in looking at the bigger picture rather than just the black and white rule on the page. But circling back to the veganism, so to speak, I do very much take the holistic approach around it when it comes to diet, in that it reduces my stress, it makes me feel happier in myself. I'm a person who says they believe something and I act on it.
Yeah.
And that's one of my qualities or my values in myself I respect the most. So I imagine in terms of happiness and digestion, it works a lot better for me to be this way.
I'm glad actually you found something that works for you and, you know, makes you happy, because as you said, it actually adds up to and good digestion and making you feel good. So it's fine. I guess what I have a bit of problem with this industry is not about making a little bit less of these food products that you don't rely on survival, that are not that essential, but it became such a trendy thing that now everything that is labeled, considered to be healthy, when in fact is so far from health that you can't even see it. And I do have issue because it just became such a marketing and brainwashing tool, and it's very difficult then to explain to people that, you know, it's okay not to eat cheese. That's absolutely fine. You don't need that for survival, right? But it's not okay to choose vegan cheese that has this long list of ingredients or this long name of one ingredient that God knows what means. That is not healthy. And that's where a lot of misconception comes from about, these products.
I would agree. I've done a lot of research, of my own research, and I have come to understand that it is different for everyone. So for me, it works very well. I did introduce in the last year, I started having honey again. Not because I necessarily felt that my health required it, but because when I revisited why I'm vegan and what my ethics are, when I looked up the issue with animal rights in terms of honey production, I have no issue if a mosquito lands on me to squish it.
Yeah.
So why do I have an issue with bees? And for example, harvesting crops, a lot of insects and even small mammals get killed. Now, of course, I want to minimize my impact. With honey, I do try to source it from smaller farms because of the environmental impact and the biodiversity effect. But I really try to do my best, but I don't go hard on myself if I'm not perfect.
I love that actually, because my grandpa was a beekeeper and I know how much love and attention and passion was going through it. That's how we were making pocket money as a kids. We had to work in a bee office, like making these things where honey was then gave to the bees and they were like storing there. So what I want to say towards that, I love your approach. Being vegan is not about just cutting all the sources and choosing products with vegan label. It's about supporting also this biodiversity and animal products in some way, that you're choosing the best quality. And if you actually supporting farmers that, you know, are passionate about it, that cares about those bees, that they create this product with so much love, that they look after them. I'm not vegan, but I love bees. And I do my best. Even living in London, I always put flowers in the balcony as much as you can, as diverse, as colorful, for bees to come and have safe space, putting them water for them to rest if they want to. Because I just love that. And they create this lovely product. Why not enjoy that? Because I feel this is mutual support that goes for each other. And I think, you know, that's vegan-friendly approach.
I would guess so. I've always said, if we had chickens in the future, pet chickens, that I wouldn't be objected to eating the eggs. Now, there are things that come into play, like, would I now find it actually gross? But on from an ethical standpoint, I wouldn't be against it, because it's an unintentional byproduct. My protest, personally speaking, so this is just my personal thing, is with factory farming. And in terms of animal slaughter, I can't bring myself to that, but I also don't necessarily object two people who hunt their own food and use the entire animal. I think in a realistic world, that's a far better alternative than factory farming, rather than living in the idealistic world, which, if you look at the broader perspective, these protesters, they're living in the idealistic world, and actually what they're doing, even if they're the perfect vegan, they're putting off hundreds of people from making a small difference.
Yep, that happened to me.
Yeah, so I actually see it in a broader perspective, the whole veganism thing of it works very well for me. I know how to do it. I feel like I'm quite healthy, energized, I live the life I want to lead, and I'm happy.
Yeah, that's the most important thing, isn't it?
But it's not for everyone. For one example, I need to stop rounding it off, but one example, my ex was Cuban and we went over there. If you live over there, you cannot be vegan, both from a financial perspective, also from a socio-cultural perspective, and just from a pragmatic perspective.
Yeah.
Literally, you could do it. The foods are there to do it, but you're going to be miserable. You're going to be socially isolated. You're going to not have a balanced diet because there aren't vegan protein powders over there.
Yeah.
There aren't easily accessible sources of protein. Even things like chickpeas were very hard to source. We had to drive to 4 different stores to find some chickpeas. And we'd packed a suitcase with oats and protein powders, things like that, for 2 weeks.
Wow.
So from a pragmatic perspective, you can't do it.
Yeah.
On paper you can, in practice you can't, if the goal is feeling good and being happy.
Yeah.
I want to just start rounding things off now. If you had one piece of advice that people could do from now, just one small change or one small shift in mindset, what would it be?
Because you asked specifically about nutrition, I'm gonna say this. We don't need these fancy names, crazy diets, and the next trend that comes in. The simplest thing to follow for a good diet and good nutrition would be, if you have your plate round, half of your plate should be filled with fruits and vegetables. Quarter of that plate would be your protein. Another quarter of your plate would be your starchy vegetables, grains, and things like that. And that will be your balanced meal. And that should be fine and enough for you to have nutritional and balanced and life and feel good and feel satisfied with your meal. Because I feel like we tend to overthink how many grams I need to have I met requirements, and so on. Oh, and so also to mention that, all that plate would be splashed with some good fats, maybe some olive oil, lemon juice, whatever. Well, lemon juice is not good fat, but just have good fat somewhere in that plate as well. And you should be sorted instead of following all the ketos, Atkins, carnivores, or what else is there? There's a lot of them, right? So yeah, I would say keep the balance in your plate like this. You will be fine because you don't need much. And the following then thing would be to think about your digestion before nutrition. Because if you don't digest well, then you will not absorb your nutrition well.
So thank you ever so much for being my guest today. And if my viewers want to learn more from you, if my listeners want to learn more from you and about your approach to nutrition, where can they find you?
So my Instagram, my website, and my practice. I do consultations online normally because after COVID that just became more convenient for everybody, and you can just reach probably more people at more convenient time and from different places. So it's called Nutri by Yuste. Yeah.
Perfect. And I will, in the description, put all of the links to Yuste's different media handles. So thank you ever so much for coming. Thank you everyone for listening, and see you next time.